Welcome everybody to the Legacy series. We are here with Pastor Peter today, and we are talking about the defilement of an evil report. All about gossip, all about negativity and evil reports. It's a good topic.
It is a good topic, and evil report, like a bad report, you know.
Yes.
You call it evil because, you know, there's two sides, right? There's the good and the bad side of life, light and dark, you know. So it's either, you know, good or evil, right? So, and everybody's drawn to that side. The carnal nature of man draws us to the negative side. That's why gossip magazines sell so well, right?
Exactly. And I mean, this is my first question right there. Why does it feel so good to gossip? Yeah. You know, like when, you know, you find out a piece of information about something and you just have that urge to spread it, or someone pulls you aside and says, hey, you know, I've got some news for you, and you can't help but raise your eyebrows and get excited. Why does it feel so good?
Well, I think it is the carnal side of man, the fallen side of man. The Bible says it's like dainty morsels. It tastes good going down, you know, like, you know, donuts and all those kind of nice things, chocolate. And but afterwards, you know, well, not so much chocolate. I like chocolate, but hey, we all feel bad after eating a donut, right?
Well, that's right.
So the thing is, it feels good, and it satisfies the carnal side of man. And you know, the old saying, even newspaper, bad news sells. You know, people are not drawn to good news so much, and of course, the gospel is good news. It's great news, but people are drawn to bad news, and even on the internet, of course, it's all the gossiping stuff that people like to hear. People like to be in the know. You know, when people aren't in the know, they can get upset, but people love secrets. You know.
Can make themselves feel bigger, I suppose, eh?
Yeah, and of course, I think it comes from the forbidden fruit, you know, and it's true, you know, they say that forbidden fruit, or, you know, that which you can't have always tastes better than what you can have. Yeah. I don't know, you wouldn't have never been on an eating plan, but I've been on many, and it's always what you're not supposed to eat that you want. Exactly. Even though you're eating lots of maybe chicken or fish or whatever, it's the steak you want, you know. So you always want what you know, it's that forbidden fruit, and that's why, of course, even people go and have an affair because it's more tantalizing. You know, it's got that tantalizing, secretive aspect of it, and that's a well-known trap for people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, I mean, it's such a great message, and it's an important message, I think, particularly in Christianity today. So what propelled you to want to preach this message on the Legacy Project and to the church?
Well, I think it's one of those messages that can save a lot of people a lot of heartache and take them down a wrong path, because people, as you heard in the series, people become defiled when they hear something. What you hear, it's a little bit like, you know, people believe what they read in the newspaper, even though we know there's a lot of fake news out there, right? We know that there's a lot of news that isn't real. I've seen news that has not been correct, but the thing is that people believe what they read, or people believe what they hear, and so then you become, you form your mindsets through that, you form your opinions about that, and when you hear something about somebody else, once you've heard it, I mean, you just think that about the person, even though you may not have thought, well, is it true or is it not true? But it defiles you, and once it goes into you, you know, it's hard to get out of you, right? It's always in there. It's like those images. People look at images. You know, it's amazing how images can pop up in your mind from years ago, you know, and smells bring that back, and, you know, those even photographs, you know, the things is, you know, in our mind, we don't forget things. And so it is true, things we hear and we're drawn to, and so they defile us and cause us to think wrong of people, or cause us to, you know, have bad opinions about things, and so forth, so forth. So, yeah, and I thought it's such an important message for Christians to live an overcoming life, to live a clean life. You know, the Apostle Paul says, be careful of what you listen to.
And it can be obviously very difficult to live a clean life, but, you know, you mentioned that evil reports will always come, you know, and it's about how you respond to them, and you know, you're always going to be exposed to that.
And we're bombarded today, particularly social media, but even billboards going down the motorway. I mean, we get messages all the time, right, from everybody. But really, we're talking about, obviously, even people in the church, or neighbors, friends, family, you know, gossiping to us, telling us about things, about people, and, you know,
I want to ask you, what do you think, what's the difference between spreading an evil report and merely just having an opinion about something? Like, for example, you mentioned in your message that, you know, people have opinions about all sorts of things, right down to the songs that we sing in church, or things like that. And And what's the difference between having, an evil report that's negative and could be defiling compared to someone just simply having an opinion on something?
Yeah. I mean, everybody has an opinion, you're right. And of course we do. We have opinion what clothes we wear and all that kind of stuff. And but the thing is, it's what you do with that opinion. And so if, for example, somebody doesn't like a song they sing in church, then they need to talk with the worship director about it or the pastor about it, rather than talk to the person next to them in the pew about it. And so it's who you talk to about your opinions. And so, if you say the person beside you, oh, I don't like that song. Do you like that song? And it allows me, come along to church, we've got to sing that song, and you get all negative about it. You're fueling that person as well. But if you've got something that's on your heart, then you need to take it to the right person and deal with it properly. Same as when you hear something about somebody, you can't just repeat it because it may not be true. You need to either go back to the person, and often when somebody's telling you about somebody, it's good to say, well, do you mind if I go and see that person and ask them that? And they'll often say, oh no, don't do that.
Yes, exactly. Well, exactly, that's right. And that's interesting, because it's all about approaching that person one-on-one, and that's how you, I guess, share your opinion, is like you just said, is not going between the people. And I guess you as a pastor, for 38 years, you've probably had your fair share of times of confrontation, like the Bible talks about, sharing a matter one-on-one. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. And what would be some tips on confrontation, how you've been able to, there's been a sensitive subject about someone or something like that, and you have to approach that person. Sure. What are some tips on confronting?
Well, I'm not big on confronting. I don't like it, but most people don't like confronting somebody, unless you want to cause trouble, right? Because it's always difficult. You hear something and so forth. Say, for example, you hear somebody has done something majorly in sin, and you've got to talk to them about it. It may be true, it may be untrue, and it can be awkward for that person, just as awkward for them as it is for you. But it is important to, when you see something or hear something, that you talk to the right person in the appropriate way about it. And I think you've got to go with a gentle spirit, not an angry spirit, not a condemning spirit. Go with a grace spirit, spirit of grace, to make sure you can restore that person if what they've said is, if what is what you've heard is true. But it's true, a lot of people tell you as a pastor a lot of things for a lot of reasons, and sometimes those reasons are not you got to read between the lines. Why are you telling me this? So it is, confrontation is never easy, but you must always carry that spirit of grace, spirit of forgiveness, the spirit that you want the best for that person. You're not out to beat that person up or to put them down or to condemn them or to to think ill of them. And sometimes people have come to me and says, I need to tell you something, but don't tell anybody else. And these days I have to say, listen, unless if it is appropriate, I may have to share it. Like for authorities, if somebody's come and been messing around with kids or something like that. These days you have to go. And so it's one thing to keep people's confidence, which you want to do and need to do and have to do, particularly things. But sometimes there are things that you have to pass on to a higher authority, which does make it very awkward today. But if you don't, obviously, everybody's in trouble. More hot water, more hot water. And so, I caution people, if depending on what you're going to tell me. Normally it's something pretty small, to be honest, but it's big to them. Exactly. Right? Big to them. And so it's not a big deal. You can just pray about it. And God has graced me that I do forget very quickly what people come and tell me, which I'm really happy about. I mean, some people can remember, things that people told them. Maybe it's because I get so many people telling me so many things, but honestly, I couldn't remember what people tell me last week. I've moved on, and that's a grace.
That's a really good grace.
It is a good grace. Otherwise, people, always thinking about that person or thinking ill of that person. How could they do that? And it is the other thing, of course, it is true that as a pastor, I often think, I've heard it all now, I've seen it all, nothing's going to surprise me. And then somebody comes with something that goes, wow, I didn't see that coming, it's like out of left field, I'm just like so surprised again. So it is amazing how life is interesting. It's got a lot of curveballs in it, but you just got to make sure you hold your grace, and as I said, you're always believing the best for people.
Yeah, and so I suppose that all comes back to heart motives, doesn't it? Particularly with confrontation, and I guess similar as well as actually with gossip. It all comes back to heart motive as well, right? When you're telling someone is what is the motive in your heart. And you mentioned the definition of an evil report in your message. You say an evil report involves distortion of the facts, incomplete facts, one-sided or false information. It's given with the wrong motivation and causes a hearer to come to an inaccurate conclusion and therefore respond to unscriptural conclusions.
Sounds like a great quote.
That sounds like a great quote, exactly. Who wrote that one? And so, I mean, even just as like when you're confronting people about a matter, between one and one, and it comes back to heart motive with how that's responded. And it's the same thing with gossip, though, as well, having a negative heart motive. Right. So would you say that evil reports are often a result of some ulterior motive inside?
People often want to put down somebody to make themselves feel better. The tall poppy syndrome and all that kind of stuff. And, people spread bad reports for all kinds of reasons. Maybe they've got in for that person. Maybe they just don't like that person. As I said, maybe they want to feel better about themselves and all that. But gossip is like a cancer. Gossip, in a church can destroy a church. And that's why, the Bible is very strong on gossip. List gossiper was slanderers and murderers and
that's right.
List sexual immoral.
That's amazing.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, because I guess we're all guilty of that one then, aren't we? I mean, that is amazing. I always find that, like you said, along with adultery, fornication, murder, and then alongside that you've got envy and gossip, which is amazing. And just goes...
Well, they destroy lives, and that's right.
And it goes to show with God that sin is sin. It really is, I think within church life, probably one of the most central themes I've experienced anyway with gossip would be the theme of people deciding to leave the church.
Right.
People, if someone decides to leave the church, people talk about it and all, and you often hear that saying, "Oh, well, they were offended," And I think it must grieve you sometimes being the senior pastor, particularly if a person has come to you and talked to you about the reasons why they're leaving the church, and perhaps they're very valid reasons.
Sure.
And then you might hear people say, "Oh, well, they were offended," And so I want to ask, like, in terms of that, what actually is offence, and what are some examples of actual offence that people would leave the church by?
Right. Well, of course, Jesus said offences will come, right? So we all get offended. I mean, offence can happen because somebody says something about us, or somebody does something to us, or, we hear things, we may have heard it wrong, we may have heard it right. There's so many things people can get offended over. I mean, even if somebody doesn't shake the hand, they can get offended, right?
Yeah.
I had a guy in the church get offended over me because I couldn't remember his name,
right.
And I said, I went up to him and said, "G'day, mate," and today people probably say, "G'day, bro." I don't know, but but in any case, he said to me once, he said, "You can't even remember my name." He was really upset about it. I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I'm really sorry." He had one of those names that were difficult to pronounce to start with, difficult to remember. I said, "Look, I'll do my best." And next Sunday I saw him coming, and I knew that he wanted me to call him by name. And do you think I could remember it? You're mind blank.
Exactly.
And so I said, "G'day, mate." And he got upset. He left the church over.
Oh, God.
We've got to grow bigger than that. I should remember his name. Names are important. It's my fault. To be honest, most people today, some people leave the church for good reasons, as you know. Some people leave for bad reasons. The way you leave a church is the way you're going to enter the next church. So if you're going to leave over offence, you're going to become offended in the next church because you haven't dealt with that issue.
That's exactly right.
But the thing is that a lot of people come to me now and somebody else in the church has offended them. Maybe a business dealing, maybe even a relationship fallout, and there's nothing I can do about that. It's not me out there upset with, or the church are upset with. It's the church is about God and people, so it is the people. And so then people said, "Well, I'm offended. I can't be in the same room as that person."
Wow.
And I even say, we've had, obviously, unfortunately, even marriages break up and the odd one. And I always say to people, look, work it through, don't run. But inevitably, everybody loses out. They normally both take off. And because people can't, they don't want to see each other. They're offended at each other, upset with one another. And even though I can understand from a human point of view, hey, we're all going to be in heaven together, so we all better get on. And, and I always say to anybody who leaves church, come and see me, shake my hand, look me in the eye, because one day we're going to catch up. We're going to see each other, and I don't want you to feel embarrassed. I don't want to feel embarrassed about it. We need to be bigger, and so people come and people go. Obviously, as a pastor, you want to hold as many people as you can. You're building a vision, and the sad thing is when people leave too, is other people don't understand. A lot of people don't understand why they're leaving. They've came and told me why they're leaving, possibly. Maybe, to be honest, half the time they don't tell me the whole truth, by the way. And sometimes I'm the last one to hear. They tell me what they want to hear, and they justify it. And, but the thing is that often it's the innocent. What I feel for is people who are innocently hurt because that person, their friend, left, or and they don't understand the reason why they left.
That must be hard, I suppose, for you as a pastor then. And you've said it before that sometimes you lose sleep, of people that leave the church.
That's probably, for me, I know some people, pastors, have got different issues, but for me, it's like you lose your arm, you lose your finger, and so it hurts. For me, it hurts because I care for people. I love people. I'm not just saying that. And so the biggest hurdles in my life is when I've lost people, good people, and particularly when it's no fault of our own. And I've had people that obviously I've had to try to work through something in their life, and they haven't wanted to work through, so they get up and run out of the church. And then other people are upset with me, or upset with the church, and but they don't know the whole story.
No.
People don't know what goes on behind the scenes, what people are going through, and I don't half the time either. But obviously, as I said, I think just as a family, it's important to journey together and stick together and stay planted and so forth. So work through the offences, because offences will come.
No, that's very good. And then just to finish us off, then. What would you say, like we just mentioned before, obviously offences will always come, and then and bad reports will always come. So then us as Christians, what are some tips that we can apply to ensure that we safeguard ourselves against taking those offences personally or allowing them to defile us, really?
Yep. Well, one of my main points on a leadership message that I speak about is to know the power of a good report. There's plenty of good things in life, and so obviously it's a little bit like movies. Watch good movies, not bad movies. And so listen to good things. I know sometimes things come out in left field. Somebody comes up and tells you something before you even know it. They've already told. They blurted it over you. Sometimes people even, if I use the word, spew all over you. They're upset and so forth. And I've had to say people like calm down, slow down. But the thing is that things happen. But you got to just watch over your heart. Don't hold things. Give things to God. Take it back to God. Let it go. Pray for that person. One of the biggest keys to not be offended is to pray for the person who's offended, just to bless them in the Lord.
Very good. Love your enemies, as Jesus says. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We'll wrap it up here. This is us talking about a defilement of an evil report, Pastor Peter's message on the Legacy Project. So if you haven't seen it, you can check it out on the website, on the app, or on YouTube. And thanks for joining us, and thanks for chatting.
Thanks, Kane. Excellent.